Without a doubt, that time I got reincarnated as a slime is one of the most comprehensive and detailed isekais I've ever seen, and if you follow my character breakdowns for the series, you'll definitely know how much thought is put into the writing. But other than characters, the world itself is equally as good, especially when it comes to the nation that Rimuru managed to create with the help of his friends and allies. So in today's video, let's take a complete look at the entire Jura Tempest Federation, and it goes without saying that there will be spoilers, so here's a spoiler warning just in case. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more Tensura content like this in the future.
この日、歴史にジュラテンペスト連邦国、そして中央都市リムルの名が。
As we all know, the Jura Tempest Federation is the country founded by Rimuru Tempest, but before the formation of the country, it was only just a small goblin village found near the Silk Cave. After the direwolves were defeated, Rimuru became the leader of the village, and he would later employ the help of Kaijin and his Dwarven friends to help improve the village. They provided technical knowledge to the hobgoblins, and they managed to make many improvements to the village. As the village grew larger, it attracted the attention of 4 nearby goblin tribes, so they decided to join as well. The elders from the respective goblin tribes were given the title of Goblin Lord, and they will work under Rigurd, the newly appointed Goblin King. Eventually, it became home to Benimaru and the others, and thanks to the individual skills that they brought, the village was now able to grow into a town. When the Orc disaster incident ended, Rimuru established the Jura Forest Alliance with the Lizardmen, Orcs, Goblins, Dryads, and Treants, and he became the Chancellor of the Great Jura Forest. The alliance was formed with the intention of building a cooperative relationship with all the inhabitants of the forest, and this concept will eventually lead to the creation of the Jura Tempest Federation. Later, King Gazer Dwargle officially recognized the Jura Forest Alliance as its own sovereign nation, and it was reformed into the Jura Tempest Federation. The town was also made into the capital of the Jura Tempest Federation, and it was named Tempest or Rimuru City. Now, because the Tempest Federation encompasses the entire Great Jura Forest and not just the city of Tempest, there are bound to be different sentient species living under it, so here are some of the inhabitants. One of the very first species to be part of the nation was obviously the hobgoblins, and they make up the majority population. Early on, they handled most of the logistical, production, construction, and military work, but later when the nation grew larger, they were trained to work in the hospitality, political, and government sectors as well. The Tempest Wolves were another of the earlier species that joined Tempest. Because of their strength and size, they will help in the transport of goods and materials, serve as riding mounts or pets, and even help to pull carriages. The dwarves also lived in Tempest, but mainly Kaijin, who works as a builder and blacksmith, Gum and Dot, who are responsible for clothing, and their brother Maid, who handles construction. Also thanks to the treaty with Dwargon, King Gazer gave the former minister Vesta to Rimuru as a peace offering, and he was put to work inside the Silk Cave, helping to research and cultivate the Hippocute plant. Moving on, the nation is also home to the Kijins, and they have some of the most important jobs in Tempest. Grobe is their dedicated blacksmith, and he helps to produce high-quality armor and weapons. Chuna handles almost all the production and domestic matters, even sometimes acting as Rimuru's real secretary. Souei is responsible for security and later intelligence gathering. Benimaru is the commander-in-chief of the military, while Hakuro acted as the military advisor and also instructor. As for Shion, she called herself Rimuru's personal secretary and bodyguard, so let's just leave it at there. Moving on, there's also the High Orcs. They are led by Gel, and they handle all the construction of Tempest, while the other High Orcs live in settlements around the forest, but they will produce their own specialty goods and send it back to the city for trading. Then there's also the Dragonutes, mainly the ones that follow Gabiru, and they were put inside the Silk Cave to cultivate the Hippocute plant and produce healing potions. They are also responsible for the protection of the researchers working inside the cave. As for the Dragonutes that follow Sokka, they were placed under the command of Souei to help with intelligence gathering. Additionally, they are the kobolds. They used to be traveling merchants, but after seeing Tempest, they decided to make it their base of operations. There's even hobbits of halflings, and Rimuru had them help with the farmlands. Besides that, the merfolks that resided in the nearby lake were also residents of the Tempest Federation, but after they were harassed by amphibious monsters, they asked Rimuru to help them. In exchange, they provided resources from the lake and even ensured the safety of travelers along the lake. As the city grew into a trading hub, many human travelers, merchants, and adventurers started to call Tempest their homes as well. Several other worlders also lived in Tempest later on, like the baker Yoshida, Masuki Honjo, the other worlder children, and many more. The Tempest Federation was also home to some of the lycanthropes of the Beast Kingdom of Eurozania, because after Claymore was defeated and Karen stepped down as a demon lord, a few decided to stay in Tempest. Later, Tempest will also become home to demons as well when Diablo invited the Demons Trio and their subordinates to work for Rimuru. But there's more. During the Founders Festival, some of the inhabitants of the forest came to pledge their allegiance to Rimuru, like the Rabbit Folks, the Equinoid, and the Bovoid. There were also elves that wanted to live in Tempest because they wanted to escape from the war between the Equinoid and Bovoid. Rimuru accepted their offer and allowed them to stay in the 95th floor of Ramurus' labyrinth. Speaking of Ramurus, she also became a permanent resident when she built her labyrinth underneath Tempest, and the only reason Rimuru allowed her to build it was because he wanted to use it as an attraction. Furthermore, because of her presence, the Dryads all moved into the labyrinth as well, and even the Treant village was brought to the 95th floor. Since I'm talking about notable inhabitants, I need to at least mention our resident Weep Dragon Valdora, and after he was released from the unlimited imprisonment, he mostly spends his days reading manga, eating food, and goofing around with Ramirez. Having said that, because of the formation of the Tempest Federation, Rimuru completely restructured the distribution of power and also introduced different governing bodies so their new nation is able to run smoothly. Within the government, the person holding the highest position of power is Rimuru himself. The person with the second highest authority is the Prime Minister of Tempest, and that position belongs to Rigurd. He has the highest authority when it comes to everything related to the internal affairs of Tempest, but during wartime, his authority is passed over to Benimaru, the Minister of Defense. As the Prime Minister, his job is to essentially handle all the day-to-day administrative work, lead the cabinet of ministers and coordinate them. However, he doesn't handle everything himself, and sometimes Shuna will assist him. Now, there are several different ministries within the Tempest Federation cabinet, like the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and it is led by Rogert, one of the Goblin Lords. His job is to handle most of the civil affairs inside Tempest, mainly the citizenship and supervision of local governments like the Lizardman village in the marshlands, or the High Oak settlements spread around the forest. Then there's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and this is handled by the White Primordial Tensura. She is responsible for the management of foreign affairs in and out of Tempest, like welcoming foreign dignitaries or nobles, and even arranging Tempest envoys. She is also the main representative for their nation on the Western Council. Moving on, we have the Ministry of Legislation, led by the Goblin Lord Rigurd, and he is responsible for overseeing legislation in Tempest from the House of Representatives and the Senate. Next is the Ministry of Justice, which is responsible for overseeing the administration of justice from the Supreme Court and the Public Prosecution Office. The minister for this is Rugert. He is also held by the Yellow Primordial Carrera, acting as the Chief Justice Officer of the Supreme Court, and the Purple Primordial Ultima, acting as the Chief Prosecutor of the Public Prosecution Office. The next one on the cabinet is the Ministry of Defense, led by Benimaru, and like I said, during wartime, he holds the highest authority and his job is to lead and coordinate the Tempest army. When there isn't war, Benimaru's job is to just ensure national security and maintaining their army. Hakuro is also part of the Ministry of Defense, serving as a chief military instructor, providing training to the army and also military advice during wartime. Besides that, we also have the Ministry of Intelligence with Souei as the minister. This ministry is responsible for spying and intelligence gathering on domestic and foreign matters. The Dark Shadow, or also known as the Amisu, is one of the branch organizations led by Sokka and her Dragonutes. Then we have Guard Milmouse acting as the Minister of Finance. He's basically responsible for all the financial affairs of the Tempest Federation, including trading with foreign nations, managing the national treasury, and providing Rimuru with a stream of revenue when Shuna cuts him off. He also did things like running the commerce and publicity departments of Tempest. Furthermore, we also have the Ministry of Infrastructure led by Gelt. He's responsible for all the construction and development projects and also the urban planning of Tempest. Besides that, the Tempest Federation Ministry of Agriculture is under the care of Goblin Lord Ririna. She oversees the production and development of the crops, and she also handles the livestock within Tempest. Additionally, there's a Ministry of Production with Shuna acting as the minister, and it basically handles all the production of Tempest, like making clothing, cosmetic products, or manufactured goods. Finally, we have the Ministry of Science, and it is responsible for all the research and development of Tempest. The main minister is Vesta, with Kaijin, Gam, Dog, Mike, Gabiru, and Kurobe all working under him. Now, there's also something called the Tempest Central Kitchen that is led by Shuna as well. I don't think it's a ministry, but I'll just leave it in here as well. It's basically responsible for preparing food during events, testing and developing new recipes, or serving Rimuru and the visitors of Tempest. Now, because of the location of their capital, its stable national security, extensive infrastructure and road systems, the Tempest Federation managed to become an economic hub. As such, let's go over some of the economy of the Tempest Federation, starting with the exports. Thanks to the abundance of resources from the forest, they mainly deal in high-quality manufactured and processed goods. Their biggest and most notable export is the full potion produced from the Hippocute plant. They also produce and exported their own alcoholic beverages like beer, whiskey, brandy and wine made from fruits or grains collected in the forest, but production was low, so they would form a trade deal with Eurozania and import foods from the country. Additionally, other Tempest-made products like silk fabric, clothing, cosmetics, or even magic items and tools were exported and sold to other nations. Rarer products like fruits produced by the Treants or high-grade honey produced by Apito were also exported, but because production of these products were lower, it's only exported to friendly nations. But besides exports, Tempest also had a growing domestic economy largely thanks to the adventurers and merchants that visited the city. Tourism was also a major contributor to the economy, offering numerous entertainment choices for visitors like a concert hall for orchestral performance of songs from Rimuru's previous world, a museum showcasing the achievements and milestones of their nation, the iconic hot spring bath of Tempest, a coliseum for people to fight or watch battles in, but the most important one is definitely the labyrinth created by Ramirez. Another one is food tourism, mainly by introducing a variety of different foods, but mostly Japanese food like ramen, gyoza, tempura, sushi, and many more. As for imports, although Tempest was capable of producing their own food, they needed more to sustain the population and production, so they imported things like grains, fruits, and seafood from Eurozania and other nations. They also imported raw materials and workers for development. We know that Rimur's ultimate goal for the Tempest Federation is to develop friendly relations among other nations and achieve international cooperation, so it goes without saying that they will need to have good foreign relations with other nations. Starting things off, we have the armed nation of Dwagon. Relations with Tempest are good because Dwagon was the first nation to recognize them as a sovereign nation. Both nations have a non-aggression treaty, and the contents of the treaty are as follows. Provide military aid if either one is threatened, help in the construction of roads to connect both nations, guarantee the safety of both their citizens within their dominion, and finally the sharing and exchange of technology between nations. Then there's the Kingdom of Blumen, and relations are good. Blumen is the first human nation to recognize Tempest as a sovereign nation, and they have a joint security and freedom of travel treaty. Next, the Sorceress Dynasty Sarion, a powerful nation founded by elves, and is one of the major superpowers in the West. Relations with Tempest are good because after Rimuru awakened as a true demon lord, the Duke Errol Grimoire made contact, and later he would openly recognize Tempest as a sovereign state as well. They have a treaty to exchange technology with each other, and they will also provide help in the research of the magic train. Even the ruler of Sarion, Almesia, secretly formed an underground organization with Mau Maus and Rimuru called the Three Drunken Sages. Moving on, Tempest's relations with Milium are the closest because Rimuru is a bestie. The engineering core of Tempest is even helping Eurozania to rebuild and constructing Milium's new capital. For the former kingdom, relations were hostile initially because they declared war and attacked Tempest, but after King Amarus, the Sorcerer Razan, and the Archbishop Rahim became Diablo's servants, they were ordered to start a civil war within the kingdom. During this civil war, Tempest helped to defeat the Loyalists and installed Yom as the new king, renaming Falmer to Farmanus. Tempest now has a non-aggression treaty with the new nation of Farmanus and imports the grains produced by them. As for the Holy Empire Lubarius, relations used to be hostile because the Western Holy Church helped Falmer to attack Tempest. Of course, this was the doing of the 7 Celestial Sages, so after they were defeated and Luminous Valentine herself intervened, relations were now at least on good terms. Lubarius now has a non-intervention pact with Tempest that will last for 100 years, but with the added condition of secretly exchanging the culture and technology of both nations. Finally, there's also the Eastern Empire who openly declared war and invaded Tempest. Relations were hostile at first, but after they were defeated, Rimuru had Masaoki Honjo become the new emperor. With Masaoki as the new emperor, the Eastern Empire will officially end the war, pay reparations to Tempest, and form a treaty of cooperation with each other and a separate treaty of non-aggression against the Western nations. So with that out of the way, I want to name some of the notable locations found in the Tempest Federation. Of course, the first one I need to mention is the Tempest Hot Spring, one of the earliest amenities built in Tempest. Then the main meeting hall or capital house is quite iconic as well because this is where the most important discussions of the series were held. A few more places to mention are the Colosseum and Labyrinth introduced in the Founders Festival. The Labyrinth is probably one of my favorite places in Tempest. Rimuru's house is also a noteworthy mention and it just looks like a simple Japanese style house with a pond. Also, let's not forget about Souei's house. I think it's the only one that has a built-in hot spring bath. But other than that, I think we covered pretty much everything about the Jura Tempest Federation. Although I did leave out the military string because there will be too much to talk about, so let me know in the comments if you guys want to know about it. Honestly, I think Tempest is probably one of my favorite places in anime, and it definitely plays an important role in the overall story of that time I got reincarnated as a slime.
祭りが終わると街の静けさが際立つな。そうですね。
But anyways, I'm definitely impressed at how much information there is on this fictional nation and just goes to show how much thought is put into the world building. So what are your thoughts about the Jura Tempest Federation and did I miss anything? Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel and click on that notification bell for more Tensura and other anime content in the future. Thanks for watching and as always, stay safe everyone.